Ramon, Kayla, and Will, RKW on 104.5 The Zone. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling. Pleased to be joined by a voice you heard on Hard Knocks if you're watching it this year, and a voice you will hear this Sunday when the Titans take on the Chicago Bears from Fox. He is Adam Amin. Adam, what's going on? How are you?
Good to hear you, Will. Good to hear you guys, as always, brother.
Yes, sir. Great to have you on. First of all, how much did you kind of nerd out about that? Like, I know doing preseason games in Chicago, that's already cool, but Hard Knocks, man, that's pretty awesome.
You know, I was talking to Jeff Joniak, who's the radio guy for the Bears, and he kind of summed it up. Like, he gave me a call at the end of the preseason, and we were just chatting for a couple minutes, and he's like, "Yeah, it was pretty cool that they used our voices for Hard Knocks, huh?" And I was like, "Dude, that's like HBO, and you know, I grew up watching HBO Sports and HBO Sports docs and things like that." So he said it's a keepsake we'll always have, you know, and I thought that was a pretty cool perspective to have. That was pretty awesome, man. It was the thing that, like, you get a bunch of texts about, you know, from people that you hadn't heard from in a while or something like that. Like, hey, they used your voice, and you know, you flip it on once in a while, or you flip on a highlight, and it's really cool. I'm trying not to take that for granted, man. That's a pretty cool thing.
I love it. Adam Amin, our guest, NFL on Fox, on the call this weekend. Adam, let's start from the Chicago perspective. There is a buzz around Caleb Williams in that city, I know, and we just had on Coach Dave McGinnis, Titans radio color analyst, who always tells a story about being the head coach of the Bears for 6 hours and didn't know it for 3. But talking about how there is a hype that has not ever really been in that city for a quarterback in a long, long time. Just how do you put it into words, the amount of buzz, but also pressure around this debut for Caleb Williams?
I think it's a little bit more polarizing than I realized, you know, and again, I'm from here originally. Like, I grew up here. I live here. I work for the Chicago Bulls. Like, I do the preseason games for the Bears. So I get a sense for, like, the excitement from a lot of people. And I have a lot of friends of mine that are all in, and this is it. They finally got a quarterback for the first time, maybe, you know, depending on the age of your, you know, my friends, you know, first time in their lifetime that they really feel excited about it. But there's also, like you said, I didn't think about the other end of the spectrum. And I think there's a lot of people being very cautious about this based on the track record of Chicago quarterback play over the last, probably, I would say, at least 10 years, you know, going back to when Jay Cutler, you know, in a sense, Nashville's own, when Jay was in his prime in Chicago coming out of Vanderbilt after the Denver years, I thought he had probably the most consistent stretch of play over maybe 2 or 3 seasons. And that's what's been lacking for Chicago quarterbacks for probably going back to like the mid-90s. And if you really want to take the broadest kind of picture from it, probably the last 40 years, bro, going back to McMahon and the mid-'80s, and when they actually won their last Super Bowl in '85, you know, in the '85 season. This is the first time in a lot of people's lifetimes that they actually have a quarterback to be excited about, but because of the track record, because of the conditioning, they're being very cautious about how much hype they put into this. Now, I think a lot of this has to do with when is he going to make the first mistake, right? If he has 2 great games and then, you know, has a rocky third game or something, I don't think that the panic meter is going to go very high. But if out of the gate, going up against what I think is like an underrated defense, at least the front line, at least the first line of the depth chart for Tennessee, I like their defense. I like the stars, you know, the star level players on this defense. If he has a rough game out of the gate, or if the offensive line isn't blocking for him, and, you know, Jeffrey Simmons or Tavondre Sweat or Harold Landry get to the quarterback and he struggles out of the gate, where's that feeling? Where's that panic meter going to be? So I understand the hype around it. I understand the excitement around him, rightfully so. But I also know that at some point, like, because he's a rookie quarterback, and every game he plays from here on out is going to be the toughest game he's played, because it's an NFL defense that he's never faced before. And each week you're going to get more and more tape and more scouting on him. Every game is going to be his toughest game from here on out. He's going to struggle like every rookie quarterback, like every rookie player. So I think it's incumbent on Bears fans to be excited, lean into it, but just give some grace to a rookie QB who's going to have tough outings coming up against, high-level, elite quality players on opposing defenses, and consistency from defenses that he's going to see in the next month.
Adam Amin is with us this morning. He'll be on the call for the Bears-Titans this weekend. I have to ask you this, man, because there's a lot of parallels in what the Titans and Bears have going on. And I'll just start with you guys as head coach and GM, Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles, man. Eberflus has been 3-14 in his first year and 7-10 last year. And now with so much new and everything else surrounding this team, how much grace is given for a coach with 2 losing seasons, or does it reset with Caleb Williams coming into it and all the new parts y'all have right now?
I think it's enough to buy an extra year, I think, in the life cycle of an NFL coach these days, because as we know, the Belichicks and the Tomlins and, the Harbaughs of the world are few and far between that get that type of tenure, that get double-digit years, especially when you're bringing in younger coaches, first-time coaches. Matt's a first-time head coach going back a couple seasons. And I think there was a lot of discussion towards the end of last season when the talk became, well, they're probably going to have a number 1 pick because Carolina is not particularly good. If you're going to make a coaching change, is this the right time to do it? Because you're probably going to end up drafting a quarterback. You're probably going to end up drafting what some people call a generational talent. So is this the right time to do it? So it's not as if it was a guarantee that he was going to have the job to begin with this season. I think he basically earned a year because Ryan Poles' idea was, let's have at least a little bit of continuity. You have a defensive-minded head coach. Remember, Matt was a defensive coordinator in the division, as you guys remember, in Indianapolis. So let's try to get a little bit of infrastructure in place to where he can focus on the defense. We'll get an offensive coordinator in here that we feel good about, and that's where Shane Waldron comes in after 3 years with Seattle. Did a great job with Russell Wilson for a year. We know what he did with Geno Smith 2 seasons ago when he won Comeback Player of the Year. And I figured, like many, that this was a very important season for Matt Eberflus. Now, again, is there any guarantee that if, they're flirting with the playoffs and they don't make it, that he's not going to be welcomed back? I don't think so. I do get the sense that, and maybe you watch this on Hard Knocks and maybe you got a sense for it too, but guys really have seemed to gravitate towards him. And I thought he did a much better job as a defensive play caller in the second half last year. I feel like he's gotten more comfortable, and I think Ryan Poles likes the infrastructure that's in place for not only Caleb Williams, not only the players, but I think he likes what he's done with the coaching staff so far. So I feel like he's got an opportunity, as long as they're fighting for a playoff spot, to be back again and to maybe get an extension and maybe see this through. But Poles, I give him a lot of credit because in a short amount of time, he's turned the roster around. He's kind of figured out a couple of philosophies from his Kansas City days, when he was, working under Scott Pioli and he was working as a scout for KC. I think he's figured out a couple of things and applied a couple of things from the Kansas City model to try to get a little bit of consistency into the organization that's desperately needed it at both coach and quarterback for quite some time.
Adam Amin with us this morning. He's on a call for the Titans-Bears this upcoming weekend. Adam, also with that being said, 2 teams attack each other in certain specific ways, right? And one of those spots this weekend may be a guy that's a former Titan, and that's also what's his name?
Nate Davis.
Nate Davis. Golly, I had it in my head to say. Nate Davis. What has been his issue? This preseason, you guys have somewhat tried to figure that out, as he's also still a starter, and Jeffrey Simmons, I'm sure, wants to get really acquainted with his former teammate.
Yeah, and it's been a groin issue this off season, or this preseason, I should say. Lower body injuries last year, missed a handful of games last season, and Matt Eberflus basically said in the preseason, that's a competition now because Nate Davis was a little bit more of a question mark. Now, as you guys know, a healthy Nate Davis is an important player when it comes to the quality of an offensive line. I think he raises the quality a little bit. That offensive line is, as I said earlier, probably the most important thing outside of DeAndre Swift in the running game for Chicago, because they need to block for their franchise quarterback. They need to be able to give him time as he learns how to read defenses at a quicker pace. He had some misses at times, so that offensive line play is going to be essential. And like I said, with DeAndre Swift, Nate did a good job with the rest of that line for Derrick Henry for all those years to get that guy over 6,000 yards. And I think DeAndre Swift's quality play is as essential to this team's success as Caleb Williams is. I really believe that, because this is an offensive coordinator that wants to be balanced. This is a line that has built up on the left side a little bit. They've drafted well, I think, the last couple of years, whether it's Braxton Jones on the left side. They did a nice job getting Darnell Wright on the right side last year. They beefed up the inside this season, tried to add some depth. Coleman Shelton comes over from the Rams with a good pedigree. They trade for Ryan Bates, who's a good player on the interior, can play multiple spots in case Nate Davis is hurt. But Davis not being healthy has been his biggest problem, and this is not an easy game, right? T'Vondre Sweat's going to be, excited to be in the NFL, and he was a highly touted player coming out of college. Jeffrey Simmons is a high-quality interior player who can play different spots along the line, and if that's the weak spot that they find, the Bears are going to be in some trouble trying to keep Caleb Williams upright, trying to keep him Listen, is he great outside the pocket? Yes. Do you want him to have to be great outside the pocket all the time? No. And Jeffrey Simmons is a player that can disrupt things very, very quickly. So that right guard matchup against whoever lines up across from him on the interior of that line, that's going to be one of the key matchups of the game, I think.
Adam Amin with NFL on Fox will be on the call for the Titans and Bears this Sunday. Curious as perspective over there when it comes to quarterback Will Levis, because we've clearly seen him over the last few months, doing the little things to take him to the next level. But I don't know if that's seen at a national level. What do people feel about this guy who, clearly we know eats mayonnaise at least?
Other than that, Kayla, what are we going to figure out about him, right? Can he get that completion percentage up? I think this offense is, again, sneaky underrated. I think this trio of wide receivers is as good as I've kind of looked at. I'm not saying they're like a top 5 trio right now. I know DeAndre is getting a little bit older. They're taking a flyer on Tyler Boyd, who I thought did a really nice job in Cincinnati with Brian Callahan in that offense. I really like Treylon Burks when he's healthy. When he's healthy, I think this is a quality player. And Calvin Ridley's gotten a lot of praise in the preseason too. Like, there are options out there to throw to. Chigo Okonkwo had a better season in year 2 than he did as a rookie. Josh Wiley's an up and coming tight end. There's quality on this offense, and it's up to Will and this offensive line too, which again beefed up. I think J.C. Latham's a great draft pick, and we were big fans of Peter Skoronski, obviously in the Chicagoland area with what he did at Northwestern as a collegiate player. So I respect that they've gone out, got Lloyd Cushenberry. They've gotten guys to help block for Will Levis to give him some time. He has to be able to be more. He has to be more accurate, right? And if he's doing the little things in the preseason to try to get him into a better space, to be a little bit more consistent throwing the football, like 58% completion rate's not going to cut it, right? That was the lowest in the NFL for qualifying quarterbacks. League average is about 65. Like, you got to be around league average. And I think with the trio of receivers and the tight ends, having a player like Tony Pollard, I know he's not Derrick Henry, but he's a quality player. A couple of years ago, led the NFL in yards per carry with Dallas as a number 2 guy. I think he's ready to take on a number 1 role. He played well against the Bears a couple of years ago, ran for 3 touchdowns against them when he was with Dallas. Like, I think the players around Will are quality players, especially the first guys on the depth chart. So it's up to him to be more consistent, and I like that he's doing all the little things. I like that he's trying to be more accurate. I like that he's trying to get the ball out a little bit quicker. I think there are some good things in his mechanics. Mark Sanchez is my partner on NFL on Fox. He's going to be very keyed in on what Will Levis is doing footwork-wise, where his mechanics are, where the arm slot is. And if he's done all the little things in the preseason to get this consistency up a little bit, I think this is going to be a better offense than people are probably expecting. I liked what you guys said. These two teams are very similar. They have a good trio of receivers, new play callers, essentially new quarterbacks. I know Will obviously got, those 9 starts in last season, but essentially young quarterbacks and new running backs. They're in very similar spots with the high expectations on their offensive line. I like that Will is doing a lot of the little things. He just hasn't had the hype that a number 1 pick got, which is understandable in the broad scope of the NFL. But I'm excited to see where this offense is now with all the changes that they've undergone.
Adam, we talked a lot to some of the cornerbacks, the secondary guys yesterday in the locker room, and somebody we have not seen at all this training camp was Chidobe Awuzie, obviously comes over from Cincinnati, and L'Jarius Sneed, but they are going to play. They're healthy. I'm just curious, with that secondary upgraded, clearly at that starting position, but there's not a ton of depth necessarily at that cornerback position, but what's the challenge just in this game with the array of weapons and different type of weapons that the Bears have?
I'm so excited to see who Sneed lines up against.
Yeah.
Right, he comes in with this great pedigree from Kansas City. He's a little bit disappointed that he got let go from there. He's got something to prove, maybe a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. I thought Awuzie, in his multiple spots, has been a solid player. I remember going back to Colorado and watching him play. I covered him when he was in college. And I just felt like this is going to be a quality, consistent NFL player. And when he's been healthy, that's been the case. If he's past this calf issue, then that's a very good sign for this defense. And like you said it, I agree. I think the first line of this defense, all the guys on the first line of the depth chart, are really good. I thought the Ernest Jones pickup was good from Los Angeles. A guy who's been a really good tackler in his career with the Rams. Arden Key can hopefully generate a little bit of a pass rush. I like the addition of Quandre Diggs. I like L'Jarius Sneed. Everybody does. He comes in, like I said, with those 2 Super Bowls. And, maybe this is the year that Roger McCreary takes an even bigger step up after being, a high-level pick a couple of seasons ago. So I think just in general, the secondary has a lot to like about it when they're healthy. Same thing with Jamal Adams. I've watched a lot of Jamal Adams in Seattle the last couple of years. And when he's healthy, he's a really solid player who can give a lot of impact. He was a great pass rusher from the safety spot a few years ago, and he was a good run stopper, or needs to be a little bit better tackling, but he can be a good run stopper. So across the board on that back end, especially to upgrade where they have, in a spot where, a lot of draft capital, right, used on the back end over the last couple of years, they haven't all hit. You've had to make some, concessions if you're Ran to know that, all right, maybe some of the picks that we saw in years past haven't panned out. Let's try to upgrade with some quality veteran play. That's what we get with Quandre Diggs and Sneed. And, I think Awuzie falls into that category now at this point, having been in the league a handful of years. It's going to be a difficult task because the versatility of the Chicago trio is really high. Like, Odunze can play anywhere. Keenan Allen can play anywhere. DJ Moore can play anywhere. Any of the 2 or 3 spots that they feel like in a specific formation, they can line up just about anywhere and mostly run most of the route tree. So matchups are really important. I think the physicality of the Bears receivers is higher than it has been maybe in the last 10 years. Darnell Mooney used to be the number 2 guy. He's a little bit undersized. Now he's in Atlanta. They've upgraded in terms of size. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge for the Titans secondary. But I think the physicality of Sneed, Awuzie needs to play big. And Quandre Diggs is a big hitter. He's always been an aggressive guy. The Bears have seen a bunch of him when he was in Detroit. I really like the secondary. I'm with you. I don't know where the depth is, but I like the front line of the secondary a whole lot. And I think the physicality is going to be an important factor in what we see on Sunday.
He is Adam Amin on the television call for Titans and Bears this Sunday on Fox. Just crushes it. One of the best in the biz every Sunday and every offseason. You hear him on baseball and basketball as well. Adam's always so good to catch up with you, man. Happy football season again. Looking forward to listening on Sunday.
Hopefully we'll run into you guys at some point during the season. I really appreciate all of you. And thanks for dropping the track, too. That was really nice.
Yeah, man. Sounded good.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar, that is an Adam Amin original that you heard the music
He's
that
a
Bert
DJ
bumped us back
too.
with. It sounded good, man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
By the way, I heard we ruffle feathers because Don Davenport got upset.
We just told you.
I did get a text.
Yep.
I did get a text from Don literally like 20 minutes after Ramon shot me the text. I was like, I would do it for Don, who's one of my old friends.
Oh, yeah.
One of my old partners over at ESPN. But I was like, hey, man, we got a lot going on. I had to go first.
I may see you this weekend. We'll take a picture just to make her mad, too.
Yeah.
How about that?
That sounds good. I know she loves you guys, though, a lot, and I always appreciate coming out with you.
Love it.
Appreciate it.
There's Adam Amin with us here this morning on the show. Hey, if we are reaching out for the same guests that 3HL wants, then we know we're doing something right.
Did something right.
A-listers.
Had to.
Bookending your day on the zone and all day on the zone, of course. But always a good thing when we are able to be in the same ballpark as our afternoon partners. Adam is so good.
He is.
Solid.
Adam is awesome, and he is as good of a guy as there is, as good of a person as he is broadcaster. So it's just always cool running into people